Hello and welcome to Hyper Live. So tonight's show, we are going to be talking about Wardley Maps, something that's both of interest to Daniel and I. So yeah, I guess maybe to kick things off, why don't we talk a little bit about why we've found these things useful, how did we find them, and then we can get into a little bit more detail as we go.
Definitely. Yeah, it's interesting as a CTO how you come across these tools, and it's rarely though you finding the tool and mapping it to your situation. It's more you're finding yourself being too reactive or without you might see a lot of inefficiency within your organization where you or your teams always have a different response to how you respond to things. And so it was some of that frustration and inefficiency that had me searching around for a way to solve it. And the thing that resonated with me wasn't the maps, it was the book that Simon Wardley wrote, and his first chapter, which I think was entitled On Being Lost. And that was how I felt as a CTO at the time. How about you, Gareth?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to see him at CraftCon, which is a conference that was very popular a while back, run in Budapest in an old train railway yard. And he was one of the main speakers there, keynote speakers. And he sort of told the story of how he had, he's been involved in various organizations and he'd done a lot of product work and built things and product validation, discovering, and he just found that he just didn't have the tools he needed. And so he ended up writing himself. And, that talk got me absolutely kind of interested in the concept of mapping and creating that sort of situational awareness, as Simon Wardley would call it. And it just felt instantly like something that was going to be really valuable. So over the years, I think it took me a wee while to kind of get my head around it, but then I found it really, really useful, just mapping out various kind of terrains, if you like. But I've got one we can kind of talk about at towards the end, which is a little bit more of a niche application. But maybe we want to start by introducing Wardley Maps to the audience a little bit.
Yeah. On the face of it, they can both look simple and complicated at the same time. And one of the less obvious aspects of a Wardley map is that the space between things on the map is actually meaningful. And we'll see some examples of that a little later on when we bring up some slides. But if we think about the core concepts, most of what is on the map are referred to as components. And as technologists, we often will be talking about systems, which are a type of component that you might put on a map. But what we are trying to do is actually looking at all these components that might make up your product or service and how they relate to a user, so the beneficiary of the value. And so by laying out the components on a map, you're actually trying to chart a chain of value so you've got line of sight from the fundamentals like the power you're using and the cloud services, all the way through to the things that the customer can see, which might be the user interface, or even your part of their experience is interfacing with your customer service team. And so we can lay out all of those things and the relationships between them in order to have a good sense of what goes into serving a customer and serving them well.
Yeah, I love that customer-centric kind of view. Like, it's tying components or capabilities to user needs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the distance from those needs is really insightful, right? So certain things are going to be more visible, certain things are going to be less visible.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, on the other axes, we have the product life cycle, and what's novel and new on the left-hand side of the map through to what has been commoditized over time. And so it's a really rich kind of landscape to look at.
So I'm going to pull up a visual, but it's not going to be of a map yet. We're going to have that as a bit of a tease. We're going to look at an actual map. And so this map actually described a famous competitive situation. I think maybe it's the scenario from the film The 300 or a similar point in time in history. And Simon Wardley and myself both like to criticize SWOT. And SWOT you'll see still pretty heavily used today when companies say that they're doing strategy. And SWOT has its place, but if you were the band of warriors and you were trying to plan your attack or defense, which bit of information would be more useful? Would it be the SWOT quadrant that we've got over there, or would it be that map which shows where you might be in relation to the enemy? And in a business context, it might be where your organization and its capabilities are versus in relation to the competition's position on the playing field and their capabilities. And so in this way, you can start to see the value of mapping and how it can directly tie to strategy. In this case, it's wartime strategy, but it can also relate to business strategy. So what do you think about that? What jumps to mind as you're looking at that, Gareth?
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I'm attracted to is I like visual forms of information. And so as soon as I see the map on the left, then you're instantly seeing there's just more information to assimilate there.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to see, well, where are the new opportunities? Where are the threats coming from in a more kind of precise way? And
Mm-hmm.
then you start to think about what are the actions you can take based on that information.
Yeah, so this more zoomed in version talks about some of those elements. So as you called out, the visual element, not every person in the planet is a visual thinker, but many are. And the good thing about visual communication devices is they're easy to have to get around the table and have a conversation around. You can, it's very tactile. You can point to things. You can, you can move things around, and that conveys information. So it can be very rich. Not to mention that a picture tells a 1,000 words, so they say. The context, there's a few other things to call out because we'll see them relevant to the Wardley maps, which may feel a little bit more alien than say this geographical map that we're very used to seeing. So the context is relevant to a point in time. Now, anyone who's watching and is a subscriber of my blog would be familiar with me mentioning context a lot. And it's always about what is the situation that you're in now. And so maps, something to really highlight about the map is it's only representing what is true at a given point in time. And so you are making plans based on what you see on the map. But once you execute it on a plan, things on the map are changing and your competition are changing things as well. So to plan your next step, you need to look at what is the new composition of the map. And that principle is just as true when you're using Wardley Maps. So we can see the position of different things and how they relate to each other. We've got an anchor, which in this case is the compass up in the top right-hand corner. And then we've got how things are moving. So they're using the arrows to point where the direction of travel for the armies. And again, on Wardley Maps, as we'll see in a moment, you will see the use of arrows to show the direction of travel. Maybe it's particular components are maturing in terms of their life cycle. So maybe something that was newly invented. I mean, we talk a lot about AI on this program. So we've got a lot of, let's say, AI coding tools. Currently, they've come from out of nowhere. So they're Genesis, and then then there's like these open source projects and commercial projects around them, and they're evolving. And pretty soon they'll be, very mature, products that are, pretty foundational. I'm not sure they'll ever become, commodities, but they do travel in that sort of left to right sense. So when we're mapping, you basically go through this cycle, and this is Simon Wardley's strategy cycle. So you essentially, as you're plotting things out, and you could imagine, say with, what's the leader's name in the 300, Gareth? Is it Lioness or something? I forget.
Yeah, I think so.
I've got to rewatch the movie. But when he's planning his, his strategy against the opposition, he's going through these steps. He's thinking like, the purpose is to defend our nation, and this is the position where they are on the landscape, and it's raining, so therefore maybe that gives us an advantage of cover. And then we have principles that were pre-agreed. So we know we're ferocious, and then we play that strength, and we've got to act scary, that strikes fear into the heart of others, etc. And then he's also got his the choices that he's making, and so things are sort of going in that cycle, and it's Wardley based on Sun Tzu's 5 factors. So yeah, there is a wartime theme going there. So what does this trigger for you when you're thinking about this strategy cycle?
Yeah, I think it's just introducing those different dimensions, right? And all of these things interact together. So, you could have great purpose, and, you've kind of checked the landscape, you've got great leaders, but if the climate is not in your favor in a particular point in time, then it's going to, potentially have a big impact. And so it's just thinking about how all of these things work together. I think the doctrine is one that we've both sort of used before, and just understanding, it's helpful to understand where you are, like your current sort of leadership style and capabilities, which determine how quickly you can enact a strategy. So, yeah, it's just bringing these different sort of lenses together, I guess.
Yeah, I think that point is a really good one. Is like, is your organization even in a position where it could act quickly on strategy? So if you've got quite rigid plans that you only update once a year, then seeing something, a change in the market and being able to respond to it can be quite difficult. So I'm just going to, all right, let's pull up an actual Wardley map then, put that on the screen. So this is one that features in Simon Wardley's book, and describes, I believe, one of the businesses that he was a CTO or CEO of. I can't remember which. He's been both roles across his career. But I think it was one that was around the time when the idea of mapping things to get an understanding of where his company was at and some of the choices they had in front of him. I think that's when it started to materialize for him. So let's look at this map. So we mentioned before about the customer. So the customer sits at the very northern part of the map, and the components that are facing the customer are the ones that you imagine. So this was an online image manipulation service, and so they could interact with that capability. There was also an ability to then print images that you had manipulated online. So I think maybe it was upload photos and clean them up, and then a third component that you could interface with, which was the storage of the photos. So I think this may have been even like a Flickr era online photo SaaS product. And then you can see components going back. So there's the website, which had those features in it. The website behind it had the CRM. So if you run a SaaS product, you know that you've got to store your customer details and information about your customer. And then the website's running on a platform. And then that platform's running on compute, and that compute is running in a data center, and that data center is running on power. And so it might seem a bit pedantic to have all of these elements mapped out, but sometimes things will change. Like I believe they had a choice of, we're in a data center. Should we move to the cloud? I think was one of the choices that were upon them. So you can start to see like, well, that is a strategic decision. We're making a choice. We're not going to be, we might be accidental about being in both a data center and a cloud, or we could be deliberate about it, and that's going to have, payoffs in terms of efficiency. So what jumps out at you when you're looking at this, Gareth?
Yeah, I think the dimensions and the patterns that you see are really powerful. You can see straight away that the capabilities or components closest to the more novel or genesis ideas, so things like the online image manipulation, in this case, they're also really close to the customer, which kind of makes sense, right? If you're going to do something novel and interesting from a product perspective, then you hope that some of that's going to be visible to the customer to help get people excited.
Yeah.
And then you can see the span. So we're combining a bunch of things together to create or to meet a customer need. We can say they span from the custom built online image manipulation in this case all the way through to commodity power. And there's lots of information here, right? So we can start to see what are the key capabilities. Have we got a few, or have we got many capabilities? So it indicates the complexity of the product that we're trying to pull together here as well. I think it sort of reminds me also of when I first started trying to pull maps together, the sort of wrestling with how much detail you put on them. But maybe you've got some guidance around that.
Yeah, I normally use a rule of thumb of just normally about 10 to 20 components. It depends on what how sophisticated the map is, and also the sophistication of the people I'm collaborating with, because maps are, you can do them by yourself, but they're much better, worked on as a group, because it's about getting to a common understanding, on the same set of issues, and it's much easier for a group to read the map if they've been on the journey of creating it, and so if you get to 20 components, because the temptation is people want to include everything, if you have the hard number of, let's say we pick 20, then you can look on the map and say, is there some detail that isn't actually telling us a lot on this map? And so if I've got something to add, I might remove that detail. And so it's a good constraint. So you work within the constraint of not ending up with a map that has too much, but really is containing the details relating to the choices that you might need to make.
Yeah, and that sort of speaks to the audience as well, doesn't it? I guess I've found the audience tends to be a combination of technology and business folks and organizations, and it definitely works with more senior people as well. I think the visual representation. So then again, I think just being cognizant of who the audience is, and therefore, what is important in the conversation, and then how much detail you put into them.
That's right. I mean, sometimes the Wardley map can be a turnoff for certain audiences because maybe they've not attended a session like this one where we're walking through the different components, and so all of a sudden the map's pulled out and it doesn't make them feel intelligent, and understandably, because they don't have the same context or understanding of like, what does this image representation mean. So sometimes I will do mapping with a team, but we might be then find a particular choice that we made, and maybe it's a table or a 2x2 or another representation that focuses on that particular issue that is much more consumable. So a tip is often use the maps with the people that you've been collaborating with to create the map, because that's who it will resonate with most. And so what that might mean is, for an executive team, because we would use it amongst our executive team, was that first we invested some time to teach the fundamentals, so everyone's on a level playing field, and then we would build the maps together, and that was, and then we could have some really robust conversations about strategic choices, and everyone operating from the same set of information. So I might take the map off the screen just whilst we continue to chat, and I'll find the next visual that is worth talking about. Did you have examples that you wanted to talk through, Gareth?
Yeah, I can certainly let me share an example. So this is where I've used Wardley Mapping to help understand when you're introducing a new product or idea into an existing organization, which is going to be a combination of both existing systems and new capabilities. And I found this was really valuable for a number of reasons, which I'll explain as we go through a couple of slides here. But in this case, this is an example of, say it's a financial organization and they've got an existing loan application process. We can see, prospective lending customer at the top, and then they can apply for a loan in an existing system. And we can see some of the underlying technology that supports that. There's a lending app and some North system, a CRM, etc., loan management system. And so mapping that out gives you a view of, here is the these are the current systems that are important in terms of the existing products in the organization. And then here I've overlaid, here's a prospective new product, right? And so we can see it's on the left-hand side mostly, which is understandable because it's got some more novelty in it. And we've mapped out the new need, which is apply for a green loan. And then we've got a new green lending app, and that's got some dependencies on a credit scoring system and some cloud infrastructure. But we can also see lines that connect back into the existing systems. We can't deliver this thing in isolation. It has dependencies on existing capabilities on existing heritage systems. So we start to see the complexity of actually taking this new product to market.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just show a couple more views which I found useful. So then you start to really think about, well, what is the fastest path to value for this new product? Are there things that we could not connect up in order to, to test the feasibility of the product? So, for example, here we're choosing to, we can get a very simple version of the product which we can test without necessarily connecting it back to all of the heritage systems. But it also gives us a sense of, what this new value stream may look like. Who are the people that we'd need to put into a value stream in order to deliver the new product? And this one I think is really powerful as well. We're just highlighting the key dependencies. So we know that in order to get this new product to market, we're probably only going to be able to move at the speed of the slowest dependency here. So, you're just scanning quickly through those red lines, you instantly come down to this loan management system, and we can see it's even been marked with a special indicator to say that there's inertia around it, so it's going to be a bit harder to shift. And so, it just gives us lots of information, right? Maybe we now think, well, who do we need to talk to in the organization? So who's responsible for those systems? What does their backlog look like? How long would it take to get a piece of work in there? What does it look like to coordinate with those folks? So quite powerful in terms of the information we get back.
Just looking at the map as well, and this speaks to one of the ways I've used the map for analysis, is some of the components, let's say looking at the ones in the product space that are proximal together, they're often, when you're trying to work out where the team boundaries are, sometimes you can essentially circle around a number of components and see, like, well, these are proximal to each other on the map, and that also might represent a good team boundary for ownership. That doesn't mean that just because two things are close together, they automatically are with the same team. But it is interesting that often the things that are close together might be. So it's an interesting tool for that. And so one of the examples, unfortunately, I don't have a visual for it, but we applied it on a global data team to help. It wasn't the only lens we used. And there's a lot of good team boundary discovery tools, as we would have heard from Luke McManus when we were talking team topologies, and we will hear in a future episode. But Wardley Mapping can help with that too. So once you've got the map laid out, then you might be able to see, like, okay, well, this is the components that the database administrators, your data platform team might own, and here are the things that might sit with the the analysts, etc. So you can look at that, and also things that are maybe more commoditized might fit a certain personality type more than things that you need to, like, all right, we're going to invent this completely new. It's going to be Genesis. It's going to be on the far left of the map. That might take a very different type of personality.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. I think one of Simon Wardley's had a very good blog about the different types of people where people can thrive, basically. And it's not saying that any personality type is skill set is necessarily better or worse than another. It's just some people prefer to be explorers, where they're out, they're working on the left-hand side of the map with novel or custom kind of ideas. Some folks like to be more at the town planners, settlers, as explorers, settlers, and town planners. Settlers taking something that's sort of held together with sticky tape and making it work reliably, and then town planners who love to think about what does this mean to scale this product as you get more successful in the market. So I think just generally that notion of the product life cycle baked into the map is really, really insightful and powerful.
Yeah, a couple of call outs that I know, if Simon Wardley was watching this, he'd be yelling it at the screen. So he would say, but make sure you're in a healthy state in terms of the doctrine elements first, before applying the sort of town planner and pioneer type patterns. And he's right, for the reasons that we shared earlier, is that you've got to start with the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are things like know who your customer is, and be familiar with the details, and act based on evidence, not just gut feeling all the time and things like that. But when you have those different doctrine and healthy place, you are in a position as an organization to be able to enact strategy, And then so that you can be, more strategic about how you match people to challenges and all those sorts of things. And the other call out he'll make is, I think he's continued to update the terminology. So
Mm.
I think pioneer was one of the new terms, because I don't think he liked the connotations of settlers and things like that,
Yes, that's right.
which is
Yep.
understandable. Now I've got a visual I can show up on screen, which is a tool that I found that is almost like Wardley Mapping on Rails. And so I believe you can find this in the Miro template libraries, or you can search for Wardley Mapping Canvas, and I'm pretty sure you can find it online. It's Creative Commons license, so it's there and usable. I know I've definitely used it in Miro. And so it's got, 1 through 6 steps, and you can work in sequence through these sections, following the 1 or 2 lines of guidance in each section, and it makes each step a very simple step, but by the end of it, you will have a Wardley map. And so for people that are interested to dip their toe in the water, because maybe you're experiencing some of those issues that we described at the start of the Hyper Live episode, about feeling a bit lost and trying to make some strategic choices, or be less reactive. And so you can go, okay, well, let's start with number 1, purpose. What are we trying to do here? And it can be 1 or 2 sentences, but that gives you an anchor, that gives you a starting point, and you will see the usefulness of that step as you proceed through the other steps. Number 2 is scope. So we're trying to map the entire world, or we're just trying to map the problem area within the organization, or maybe there's something in between, for some relevant context about other actors that might be interacting. And then you move on. Who are the users that we're trying to benefit? What are their needs? And then what are those needs dependent on? And so you get a value chain. So you've got the vertical part. And then finally the map, which is you take the vertical list of relationships, and then you start to think about how evolved each one is. Like, hey, is this something that's just completely new, never been seen on the market? Is this thing something that we're custom building internally in our business? Or is this a product that we're consuming? Or is this a commodity that we're relying on? And so I've found that is a really great, now it can probably take you about an hour to get your first map, maybe even 45 minutes only. But you will learn by going through each of those steps, and maybe do it on a couple of different problems, and do it with some colleagues or some friends.
Yeah, I think that's a great, great piece of advice. Just all of these processes are, they're kind of designed to be collaborative, and you're kind of learning how the process works at the same time as getting value out of it. And maybe that's a pretty good place to. We've covered quite a lot of ground, so maybe it's a good place to sort of summarize. I think, we've said we've talked about Wardley Maps, but essentially we've ended up talking around a number of different things that kind of fit together. Starting with, I think the idea of starting with the doctrine, like what state are you in terms of a team or a leadership group, how ready for change are you, how dynamic and how quickly can you move, and making sure maybe you need to do a little bit of groundwork with leadership behaviors or around clarity of purpose before you get going. And then
there's an interesting thing where a lot of people say, oh, you need a strategy. I will always come back and say, you need a purpose. That is the starting point. Like a strategy, even though it's about the macro, is still about the how of what you're doing. And so it's important but it is always about like, how can I more efficiently achieve my purpose?
That's right.
Yeah.
I love the quote that Simon Wardley uses, crossing the river by feeling the stones.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, strategy isn't an exact direction to be executed in
Mm-hmm.
an exact time frame. It's a mechanism for, yes, it's aligned to purpose and it's a general direction, but
Mm-hmm.
all the constructs around maps are around sensing and responding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you've ever been orienteering, if you look up the principles for doing good orienteering, it's almost a description of how to be a good strategist and how to interact with maps in a good way. So I'll leave that for some homework for people to look up. But yeah, if you look at any good orienteering resource, it's, you know, you're looking for your landmarks, and you can only see certain landmarks at a particular point in the trip. You know, so it's a classic OODA loop. You know, so you're observing, you're orienting, and then you're deciding, and then so I think that's important. We also covered the fact that maps, you know, are a response to a problem. So don't take the tool and try and apply it. You will be, you know, you might be experiencing something where you're reactive, or there needs to be choice. A classic one is in procurement. So, you know, CTOs often have the question of build versus buy. So that, you know, start with these straightforward choices. Like, all right, well, if I'm a CTO, I'm going to have a bunch of choices about whether I build or buy. Or if you're a software team, you know, am I going to use a library, or am I going to write some code from scratch? And then go, okay, well, let's have a think about this. You know, is there mature components out there, or, you know, is there just nothing on the market? This is a type of mapping. And the type of choices that mapping gets applied to.
Yeah, nice examples. And in terms of people that can benefit or get value from this approach, certainly seen a range of different kind of roles in an organization, certainly from senior folks, CTO, CIO, etc., through to anybody in the product space, and leading you know, product engineering teams. I think great value you can get from it. Any other roles that you've seen benefit?
I mean, that product and engineering divide, it's a great way to you know, take some bricks out of that wall by having something to collaborate around, because thinking in terms of, you know, working backwards from the user is very much you know, a product skill. But doing it all the way through the components means that it's engaging for you know, someone with the product skill set. But you can have a conversation around something that, you know, may have been difficult to talk about, you know, as an engineer trying to describe, you know, why we should do something, you know, take path A versus path B, etc. Have something visual like that, and all of a sudden the factors in the decision are apparent to everyone. So yeah, I've seen it bring teams together in terms of having good conversations. Yeah. So we talked about the evolution. We talked about the components on the map. We talked about the fact that the distance between components, you know, is material. So positioning on the map is, it's not a chart. You know, a chart, the distance between 2 points, you know, may not make a difference between how you read the chart. But on a map, you know, just like a geographical map, the distance between 2 points matters and is information.
Yeah, and we talked about some ways to get started. Either, you know, just limit the number of components or capabilities you have on the map to start with to try and get the essence out of it. Be aware of the audience. The really nice canvas that you showed towards the end is a nice way to kind of get started without having to perhaps be aware of all of the, you know, all of the specifics of the map. And then, yeah, I think, you know, when I first looked at Wardley Maps, I thought they were really very product centric, which of course they can be. But then the more you use them, the more you realize that they're just a really powerful tool for anybody working in, in product engineering technology. You can visualize different things at different points in time. That's why I just shared that example showing the dependencies and showing how it can help you even understand how to organize value streams or teams. So it's a multi-purpose, I think tool and a good one to have in your toolkit.
I tell you something else. I mean, you and I spend a lot of time talking about AI coding, AI-assisted software development, and things like that. Now, if you go back and follow what Simon Wardley was posting about back in 2016, 2015, he was talking about conversational programming. So this was before ChatGPT and all that sort of stuff. So he had been mapping and looking at how the different components were moving and forecasting and anticipating a lot of the technologies that we've seen today. And he does a lot of that, and he does it not just by himself, but in working groups focused on different areas. So if you want to see we've talked about very small, localized sorts of strategic choices, but looking at mapping over longer timescales, it can be a fantastic forecasting tool. And with any forecasting tool, it's about the back testing. So you can go back and actually look at things that he shared over a decade ago and how they've played out. So I find that interesting.
It's a great example, actually. And the metaphor is quite strong, isn't it, in terms of maps with different scales? That's just zooming right out for a very, very kind of very high level view in a broad terrain.
I've always been a fan of maps. One of my favorite authors is Umberto Eco, and he had a very famous essay, which was, I believe it's how to build a one-to-one scale map of I think it was either Europe or the United Kingdom. I'll have to reread it, but it's a very amusing essay of what would go into a one-to-one scale map. Gareth, we're going to do something a little unusual and spend a few minutes plugging things, because that's what this time of the show is for. But we always have a very quick one for the guest. But given it's just you and I, maybe we can plug the course that we've been working on. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Great idea. So very excited to bring this course to New Zealand and Australia initially, and we've got our first cohorts starting in a few weeks' time. Don Smith, who's ex-Dev Academy and very well known in terms of an expert in curriculum development and educator, combined with some other folks, including ourselves and other folks at HYPR, have been putting this course together. And I think we're targeting a very specific need in the market, and that is AI applied to engineering, software engineering, and through the software engineering, through the life cycle, from everything from product discovery through to how you build, how you test, how you deploy and release. So it's been a great learning journey for myself as well, and very excited to get this underway.
We had a soft launch recently, and had a bunch of people doing some modules, and so it's in the Discord. It's very collaborative, and we're learning together. I mean, we've had probably 18 months of experience working with these tools, but no one can know everything about AI assisted coding, because there's different tools, different form factors. And so it was really cool to hear from the I think we had almost 20 participants sharing, and they're all across the spectrum. They're using different tools. Some are using in the IDE, some are using on the command line, some are using tools like Devon in a more like ambient sense, like event driven. So there's a whole spectrum out there. Some people are very nervous about these tools, wondering about it. Is it going to take their jobs or things like that? So yeah, it's a great way to learn about the tools. It was really an energizing session, and I'm really looking forward for these cohorts which are starting very, very soon. Now, if you want to watch previous episodes, you can catch us at HYPR Live on YouTube. And we often write about the things that we talk about. So you can catch that on HYPR Innovation, Our Thoughts. Anything else we should cover before we get out of here, Gareth?
No, I think that's pretty good. And yeah, looking forward to the next episode, I believe next week, which will be on data mesh and architecture that supports AI. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, Cole better be safe on his bike. We can't so
Yeah.
be safe. And hearts out to Luke McManus. We're really looking forward to having a chat with Luke. We think we could have quite a few chats with Luke. He's got lots to share. So mend up, and we'll chat to you soon, Luke.
Yep. I hope you're feeling better, mate. All right, thank you, and yeah, we'll see you next week.
Bye.